Hey there, welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you're here. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to the Starseed Ministry, our Monday morning broadcast and energetic check-in. I hope everybody is doing well. If you had a good weekend, if in fact it is your weekend, the lighting is a little strange right now. I may play with it a little bit, or we'll probably just move on to the other things that you are probably going to be more interested in looking at than my face. So I hope everyone is doing well. It's cold, guys. It's cold where I'm at, and I did not stoke the fire in the wood stove this morning, so I'm all bundled up, and my cats are doing the same. So I know it's not like that everywhere, but right here, it's uncharacteristically cold for just the start of October. Very, very interesting indeed. So today we're going to go over some pretty incredible space weather that happened over the weekend. We're going to go into the reading, kind of check in about yesterday's first quarter moon. There's a lot of crossover with the reading today with this first quarter moon energy going into this week, right? The second lunar quarter is the unfolding or the reorientation that comes about as a result of that first quarter square with the sun and moon, right? Our first real challenge to the intentions we set with the new moon come with the first quarter square. And it's often a crisis in what we're doing, in action, right? Because we find that first friction or cross purposes as the moon makes its own journey around our planet as we are journeying also around the sun. And that's that first angle that's like, what are we going to do? How are we going to make the most use of this tension or this friction or these cross purposes? And when you talk about Libra, which is where the sun is now, the sign of Libra, and the sign of Capricorn, which is where the moon currently is and will be up until tomorrow, it's cardinal energy, right? And so cardinal, there's qualities to all of these signs. And so you have mutable, you have fixed, and you have cardinal. And they are related to the way that energy is expressed of the water element, the air element, the earth element, and the fire element, right? So, cardinal energy has a lot of momentum behind it. There is action, right? Aries is a cardinal sign. Cancer is a cardinal sign. Libra is a cardinal sign, right? Cardinal air, and Capricorn is the cardinal earth sign. And they all represent some sort of application, some sort of action, some sort of momentum of unfolding or energy behind it into expansion or, like I said, application. And it's interesting when we talk about the sign of Cancer, because oftentimes the idea of the root system or the womb or the grail or whatever the family unit, it doesn't necessarily at first seem like it would be something with momentum behind it. But those of you who are studying all of this stuff and coming into your own soul's evolution, right? You do know that actually the roots have a cardinal focus, right? Even if you just study plant life, you know that the roots grow down, just as the aspect of the plant above the surface is growing up and out and expanding and changing and going through its own cycles. The root system is definitely growing down. The root system is expanding throughout the inner landscape. And so there is momentum to the ties that bind us, or the strength of our root system is a function of how deep and how broad it's able to, that root system is able to go. And sometimes when, we don't choose, we don't necessarily, well, the idea here is that we don't consciously, as an individual, as a personality coming into this life, we haven't really chosen the situations that we are born into. Although I think we all could present a really solid argument that at a soul level, especially if we're looking at astrology, we absolutely not only chose, but it is part of the larger blueprint of what we are here to learn and grow from and, resolve in terms of karmic residue. So we know that there is some element of choice at a soul level, right? Our essence that is inseparable from source, that comes into this existence to, again, grow and to allow for source or the great spirit to realize itself through materiality or third density, which is it's not for the faint of heart, as we continue to realize here. And so where was I going? Right? It just went off, just like the root system, just kind of deeply, expands downward and it takes us away. So we do make a choice at some level, but the idea here is that, the root system needs to continue to grow down and find the necessary resources in the soil itself, right? Needs to find water. The root system gets deeper in order to gather the minerals that the plant needs from the soil. And in particular, if you really are into plants and how the ecosystem of plant life really works, you also know that there is an incredible network of connection to all of the plants, especially trees, with their root system. And so there is a connection in a way that we support each other. And even at the fruition of all of that, right? The forest, for instance, the institutions, the large systems that we have built and contributed to that are in their own ecosystem, basically, even when they are subject to the fire, right, of purification, right? The forest burns down, the systems collapse under their own weight. Whatever the scenario is, the root systems remain intact and will really encourage new growth. And that is a function of all of the connection together. So we're going to talk about a lot of Capricorn today, but you can't really talk about Capricorn without talking about the sign of Cancer, because they are diametrically opposed to each other. They represent the water and the feeling element of the feminine, and the substantiation and crystallization of the feminine into the matrix of reality that allows us to actually experience this dimension and density as a physical being. So lots of themes to talk about today. It seemed really important to at the start bring attention to this Cancerian energy. Now Lilith, the lunar apogee, as we're going to see in the astrology, has moved into Leo, but I assure you she's going to come back into the sign of Cancer. Pallas Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategy in Greek mythology, right? The archetype of the Venus in the air signs in some ways, and the balance and the justice and the fairness that Libra represents, and the feminine aspect of being able to feel into what is the right strategy to achieve this equilibrium. She's also in Cancer. And in fact, Pallas Athena, the asteroid, is conjunct the star Sirius today. So there is a strategy and a wisdom that is taking us into the infinite void at the center or core of our being. And for those of you who are Sirian starseeds or have a strong connection to the star Sirius, this is the custodial connection to all life, the guardianship that results from a firm root system into the core of who we are, right? And the protector of life. And if Lilith is nothing, she is truly the representation of the protector and the keeper of the flame. And it's the flame that is our God self. It is the spirit of source. It is the spark of life, and the Lilith energy of that divine feminine and that blueprint. She'll come back into Cancer, but for now she's moved into Leo. She is in the sign of the combustion itself. So the Cancerian themes are really important to kind of, like I said, wrap our heads around a little bit as we are about to embark on much more of the themes that have to do with the social identity, the social expression, right? The zenith of our destiny, which is the 10th house and Capricorn, and is where Pluto is about to station direct on the 8th of October. So Mercury is direct, right, is still moving very slowly in Virgo still, but is now in an analysis mode, is ready to start taking all of that deep intuitive investigation maybe, or certainly going back over what we've already put together so far, and now taking that knowledge and intuition and to start applying it to this reconstitution, to analysis, to putting things where they belong. So knowing where Virgo is in your chart will give you an idea of how this is, what area of life this is really bringing itself up for you. And then before Pluto stations direct and the demolition machine starts to crank back on again, Mercury at the end of the week on Thursday, while the moon is in Pisces, is going to be in a trine to Pluto in Virgo, right? And this refinement that we can experience, that we develop through a practice, right? It's one thing to conceptualize these things. It is quite another to put it into a practice, day in, day out, one foot in front of the other, one piece at a time. You have the puzzle in front of you. You have the idea of like, oh, I have to put the pieces together, but it's quite another to put the pieces together. And this is what Mercury and certainly the Sun and Venus, all of, the last months leading up to this point in Virgo were really having us identify with this patience and this resoluteness, feeling into the satisfaction, right? Venus is all about being satisfied, and there is nothing inherently wrong with that. That is a way that we know that we are fulfilled and in alignment with the world around us, the natural world, natural harmonics. It's like, man, it's like, that's that feeling when you play music or sing, or you're part of something like that. And it doesn't have to be, but this is how I've experienced it the most, is being a trained musician and being a musician for, pretty much my whole life, is that moment, that sweet moment of satisfaction where it all comes together and all the hair on the back of your neck stands up, because you know that is that moment of satisfaction. Venus is all about that, but as this maturing, kind of ripening aspect of ourselves. So all of this Virgo energy has been so important to really establish that practice, whatever it is, and the refinement of that practice, what kind of allows us to let go a little bit of, of what it is we have been developing in terms of our focus on it, and just kind of take a step back. And when we look at the reading today and really commune here with the imagery and the way all of the cards are in relation to each other, we're going to really see a lot of imagery, especially in the animals. Boy, the animals right now are, on so many levels, are essential, I am finding. And we're going to find that there's a lot of energy around being the simultaneous witness and participant, blending into the background, but also knowing that it's not about apathy, but knowing when the right time to take action. And Mars is about how we take action. And we're going to see as well today that we can take action in terms of the bioenergetic rebuilding of the utilizing the energy of polarity within wherever Gemini is in your chart, is going to show you, what area of life that this is really expressing itself in. But we're going to see here that this is, now it's time to start utilizing and to give over what it is that we have been doing. Give it up to Source, give it up to God, give it up to the process that we have put into place. So this is a really great segue, actually, into the next 3-week challenge, or the next 3-week group participation is going to be in Hatha Yoga. So I spent a lot of time talking about this actually on Friday's broadcast. So you can either go back to that, or if you're not on my email list, you can sign up onto the email list through the link in the description box below, and you'll know when I actually release the promotional material for this next group journey together. And we're going to do a Hatha Yoga series, and I'm going to lead you through day by day the next asana or posture in this, and by the end we will have built a complete practice that then you have and can take with you. And through this process, you're also going to start really feeling in your actual body where the misalignment is and where you need to focus in order to bring it back into alignment. And we really had such an opportunity to commit to this new process with the Libra new moon, right? The dawn of a new day reveals everything changed. Now we're going through individually the process with the moon's transit of what that feels like every step of the way as we go through each of the signs around the zodiac in relation to that one seed point. So, there'll be, like I said, promotional material will be coming. If you're not on social media, you may want to do that. And certainly if you're not on the email list, the email list always gets the, all this material and all these offerings first before anyone else. So, and certainly to the Starship and the subscribers to the Catalyst Classroom, also, not only getting this promotional material up front, but if you're a monthly subscriber through Subscribestar, all of this stuff is discounted for you, that I put out in terms of an offering or a sale, or in this case, these 3-week group challenges. So in Hatha Yoga, this is the getting into the body and where we can find integration. I mean, that's what yoga really means, is the union of the polarity of spirit and matter, of dark and light. And it's a physical process that prepares us energetically to be able to hold the energy that is necessary to create that catalyzing experience. So just keep an eye out for that. Get on the email list if you're interested in doing that. And that's yoga is all the types of yoga. Hatha yoga is the physical yoga. Bhakti yoga is the devotional yoga. So when you have devotion to a particular deity, right? I mean, Christianity, Krishna, right? In more of the Hindu religion, the devotion to Krishna. These are particular examples of the Bhakti yoga, where it's such a beautiful, loving, devotional type of energy. And so through prayer, through singing, through chanting, through any means that you find to express that's the Bhakti yoga, right? Jnana yoga is the intellectual yoga, where you are much more in tune with the Orion nature, using the knowledge, the dialectic of the knowledge base, and the Hegelian dialectic, not as a means to control anything, but as an actual practice of union, right? And you can practice all of these in different ways. And then, of course, the Raja Yoga, the royal yoga, the actual meditative experience of coming into your true nature while embodied, right? And so you see how all of these are kind of like, a step on the ladder, and that's how it's actually conceptualized, at least in my training, in terms of the Vedic knowledge and the practices, the yogic practices themselves. So it's a great way to simultaneously be present and also find the space of being the witness observer, which is really what's being asked of us more and more and more. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn my mouse back on. I'm going to check in with the stream here, and I'm also gonna kind of reformat what I'm doing so we can talk about this space weather. So the Catalyst Classroom, the next session, by the way, Starseed Fellowship people, Starship people, I'm going to be putting up the poll for today's for this week's Zoom meeting, the Starship. So if you just keep an eye out for that, it's going to be on Subscribestar, and we can get that scheduled. And as far as the Catalyst Classroom material, we're going to be talking all about the sun in this next block of sessions, and astrologically, astronomically, astrophysics. We're going to talk about the black sun. We're going to talk about how to read all of the different solar weather graphs and data. We're going to talk about the possibility of the dual or binary star system, and we're going to get into so many different angles. And of course, the sun is really the center not only of our solar system, obviously, and appears to be the local center point of our orbit, right? Or our journey, right? A cyclical journey, just like everything else in the universe, as far as I can tell. But it also is like the main sign, or the main luminary and body in astrology, in terms of the person that we, when we are in full union with ourselves, with our spiritual selves. It comes through our sun sign. It's an expression of our creative and authentic voice. And it really represents in astrology, at least in the way that I read it, the person that you're stepping into when you're in full communion with your spiritual self in this personality. So there's a lot of focus on it. It tends to be like the thing that people really focus on, because it is really represents who you are when in your fullness. And so we really are very identified with it in astrology. So I thought it was going to be really important. And plus, this solar weather, the flaring that's happening, is pretty substantial, and it's a really strong possibility that during this solar cycle 25 we may get such a massive flare. And again, this is not meant to be about fear or instilling fear. This is about being in alignment with what is happening on these massive cosmic cycles, because we're not separated from it, and there's nothing to be afraid of. When you realize that there's no way you could ever be separated from God or from Source or the Great Spirit or divine creative, the divine creative energy. So let me get this formatted here real quick, and then I'm going to check in with the stream and the chat and see how people are doing, and like bring in the group energy to this process, which is so, I mean, it's just... that's the whole point, right? That is definitely the whole point. So I'm going to bring up the Schumann real quick here as well, because you can see that it's just been sound as a pound, right? It has been like this beautiful blue ocean. There's certainly been blips of amplification, and the frequency itself has been maintaining pretty much above 8 hertz. So we know that the vibe is staying high, but there haven't been loud, there hasn't been too much loud amplification coming from the Schumanns, despite what seems to be a very strong flare activity for the sun. So let me check in with the stream here real quick, guys. So good morning to Megan. What a weekend. Felt agitated and emotions are near the surface. Family tensions galore. My. Yeah, this moon in Capricorn really did kind of sober things up a little bit, didn't it? Mama Wolf Memory says, I made it. Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. What a weekend, but feeling motivated indeed to take on the world. Yes, and I've gotten your emails. I am definitely going to be responding to you today. One thing I've had to be very clear about with myself is when you, and many of you probably already are aware of this, if you also work for yourself or you work from your home base, is that when you do both of those things, it is so essential that you keep your boundaries around what is your work life and your personal life, because it's so easy for that to blend together into this unholy union where you never can escape. And I love what I do, and that's not to that's not to say that I don't love it, but it's healthy. And so, it's just important that I put that out there. So in case that you're, and I have a very specific time where I respond to messages and get into that space. So I just wanted to let you know I'm going to respond. VC says, I've never been happier for Mercury to leave retrograde. I have to echo you all. What a wild weekend. Yeah. It's interesting. I actually... you guys are gonna have to tell me what's going on here, because for me, it was wild internally because the moon moved through my 12th house, so it is like on a full multidimensional level for me. I was just like taking care of the property, right? Got to close everything up and make sure everything is stored away for the winter, and the weather has been interesting and kind of all over the place, and yes, there seems to be quite a bit going on, at least for me, in the unseen realm. And maybe that's part of the divide or the dialectic itself. It's that the spiritual aspect seems to be so much it's not that it's not present in what I'm doing, but it's like I'm finding that staying with my feet on the ground and taking care of what's right in front of me is exactly, the type of yoga that is working, at least for me right now. So, and I agree, VZ, I've never been happier for Mercury to leave retrograde. And as a person with Mercury retrograde, and I feel so much more, I'm not deterred in any way with Mercury in retrograde because it's a natural thing for me, but my progressed Mercury is absolutely not retrograde and is also in Capricorn right now. So I definitely am feeling it too. I'm just like, I'm so ready to just start moving forward in this direction. Barb says, again, I couldn't sleep last night. Don't know if it was because I was integrating a massive healing or the solar flaring. Well, we're going to talk about that because I think it's probably a little of both. And I found the dreamscape being very vibrant and strange, very strange, like high strangeness. But there is solar weather that I think may have impacted this as well. Felt like a tense weekend to me too, just too much to process. Megan also says, I didn't sleep well last night either. Odd dreams, yes, and woke often very restless, even on the pure sleep. Yes, I definitely can feel how it's not artificial in terms of the way that it is only working on the body. And so it's providing all of the tools to keep the body relaxed and to, really squeegee that third eye. And, but when that, subconscious realm is being impacted, which is the moon, right? It's being impacted, and nothing, unless you're going to really like knock yourself out, is truly going to keep you from experiencing that. I agree too. Very weird, high strangeness going on, things that didn't make any sense, but were really vibrant. And restless too on the pure sleep, one step at a time. I totally agree with that. One foot in front of the other. And this, I think, is the great part of the Mercury retrograde. We have had so much time now to really utilize that energy in terms of one step at a time, maybe having to take the puzzle apart a little bit and in order to reestablish how we're going to put it back together. And so now this is what we get to do, which I think is really great. Because, if we are in fact going to let's just get into it, right? Let's get into the solar weather. So what's really good, and if I remember it, I'll link it in social media and on, in the description box or in the comments of this video, if I remember it, right? The preparing for disaster video from Suspicious Observers is incredibly intense. That's one thing. But what I also found it to be really useful is a really specific timeline of what we could expect. And I found that actually to be really useful. That to me was just like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And if you watch that video, this blew my mind actually. And I'm going to talk about it in the Catalyst classroom. But for many of you who are digging in already to the 8th sphere and are interested in what the black sun represents, watch that video, because there is a reference to an actual darkening of the sun during the period between like a huge like as the micronova is happening. Oh my gosh, I just got like so many chills, because I think there's a lot of zeroing in now on the specifics and the narrowing into like what it's all been about. And actually, Dark Journalist did a great broadcast over the weekend, or I think it was Friday or Saturday, about the mystery school relevance to the pole shift. And again, it's not meant to be in fear. It's meant to give us insight into what we have, the information or the knowledge or the wisdom that has been left behind through many different iterations of our past. I think it's not that we are necessarily, how do I say this? We're not victims to it. And this is a process the entire galaxy goes through every time, we do a full rotation, right? And experience these micronovas. So there is a way. I feel confident that there is a way that we pop out of this somehow, rather than having to start over again and again and again. Now, keep in mind that we have started over again and again and again. And this is why connecting to the Earth and the planet is so imperative right now. And this is what the Pleiadian revival, I feel like, the whole time that the nodes have been in the Pleiadian and the eclipse season that is coming to an end, that was also a really strong Pleiadian-based lunar eclipse that happened back in early June. It's all about this resonance and being in harmony with it, because she has done this countless times, right? She knows the drill, right? And so all we have to do really is let her shepherd us through this process. And to be connected as our root system to our Earth Star chakra, to the resonance of, or even that network of that network of energy that runs through the crust of the planet, right? We've done this before. We're going to do it again. But this time it has a lot to, we're coming out of the darkest period, right? And there will be other cycles, other resets, and to not be afraid of it. And to be prepared. Like, all of this is preparing us for these experiences. Anyway, the black sun, it just blew my mind. I was like, oh, finally something that made sense to me of like, what is this about? Like, of course it's esoteric, but esoteric and exoteric are inseparable when you get into fifth density consciousness, because it's an immediate experience of creation, right? There is no time with the duality, right? It's an immediate experience of creation and fifth density. So I don't know where that's leading in general. And I think visualizing, having the capacity to visualize where we're going, where we want to go, where we want to be, how we want to harness this, rather than being victims of a very tiny group of people that have known about it and been hiding it so that they can, save themselves and then come out on top as, some sort of ruling body again, right? That's not happening. But we have to be vigilant. And I think this is a big part of the commitment process that we're going to see in the reading. Okay, now I want to share with you, right, here's the Schumann. Like I said, it's not really doing much. Now, let's move over here to what our sun is up to right now. So the flares over the weekend, there was a big one yesterday. Huge, like an X-class flare, and it's coming off of this side, 3110, which is turning out of view, but it was a couple M-class flares and CMEs, right? X-class is like the highest class of flare, and so the CMEs are coming, right? Whether or not we get the full brunt of them remains to be seen, but they are on their way. Now, this over here is just gnarly. And in fact, it has been billed as the most complex and the biggest, sunspot group in years, right? And it's coming to face us right now. So Again, this is not about being afraid. This is about trusting all of these processes and trusting yourself and your connection to the earth who has gone through this process, like I said, countless times already. It's part of the cycle of moving around the galaxy and our relation to the center of the galaxy, right? 27 degrees Sagittarius. So that's just something to keep our awareness on. But this sunspot group flared big time over the weekend. The other thing that happened is, as you can see, last night into this morning, the KP index went up to solar storm. So for those of you who are struggling to sleep or having all of these weird, nightmares and just really strange imagery that didn't make sense to me, and I had kind of like, I don't even know what that means. Energy. It was disjointed. It was like signals being crossed. Does that make sense? And when you have a geomagnetic disturbance or a geoelectric storm like this, that's kind of what's happening. It's just like, whoa. But what's interesting is that there's not a lot of density to it. And if you're really tracking those kinds of things, you'll see that there's not a lot of density to the magnetosphere, but the solar wind is moving fast. And I think that's a big part of what caused this unrest is the speed of the solar wind. And where was it coming from? Well, it's coming from, let me find it here. Hold on. We're going to format it here for you guys. Where is it coming from? That is a good question. All right. I think I can transition now. Yes, I can. All right, so here is the sun. Let's see if it's turning. It's stuck. There we go. I'm not sure why, but I can just show you. This is the coronal hole. It's turning out of view. Like this is the beginning of the weekend. So by now it's like turning out, and see this big area right here is what was the big flares. So this whole area, that the solar wind we were already getting, and this is exactly what it sounds like, a coronal hole. It's a hole in the corona. So the energy from inside the sun is able to escape in a stream that comes at us usually very fast and with a lot of density to it. And this also was where the X-class and all these M-class flares. So this is more now on the other side, but it's over here that we got to look at, this huge sunspot group. And, in that broadcast, and the Casey material, in that broadcast from Dark Journalist, one of the things he talked about in relation to the Casey readings and like a pole shift and all that is that, they brought up sunspots. And so there is an actual working knowledge that is being transmitted directly via our ancestors, our guidance team, the Atlantean oracles as the most recent of the 12,000 year cycle, right? So you're going in 12,000 year cycle, you're going in 24,000 year cycle, and then of course the half-life of all of that, 6,000 years, which is the Sumerians, right? 3,000 years, which is let's see here, you're 6,000 years ago, and then 3,000 years is coming out of the dark ages, really, right? As we were at the very bottom of the Kali Yuga coming out. And so, the plague, right? The bubonic plague, I think was, around that time is like 12th, 13th century. So, and then coming out of it is this next 3,000 year cycle, which seems to be on the other end of the 12,000 year cycle, which is a big part of the Mayan calendar, right? The 24 to 26,000 year cycle. And of course, in 2012, there was a huge flare that would have taken us all out, except it was shot off the other way. It was not facing us. So of course, we are part of this equation. So again, it's not about being fearful. And what was the first quarter moon all about? Overcoming fear and its rewards, trusting. Now, I want to read the Sabian symbol of this before we get into the reading, so you can understand here about what that means, because this is a big sunspot group, and the Schumann is not loud. There's not a lot of this buffer of loud amplification. It's pretty quiet considering what's going on, and I think that's, to me, that says something, right? That the earth is very calm. She's very calm with all of this. So can we tap into that? Can we be calm? Can we trust this process? And the Sabian symbol for 10 degrees of Capricorn, which is where the moon was in a square to the sun, our Libra sun, is an albatross, right? And you know, an albatross is a huge bird feeding from the hand of a sailor. And every piece of these Sabian symbols, every piece of it is relevant, right? The albatross, this is a bird, right? This is a huge bird that lives near the water, feeding from the hand of a sailor, right? A sailor, a human who is actually in, some sort of relationship with traveling and navigating over the waters, right? The waters of the unconscious, the ocean. And in fact, we're going to find that our full moon that's coming on the 9th of October, right, which is on Sunday, our full moon in Aries, the sun is also going to be in a degree that is all about being a retired sea captain, right? So there is this sense of connection and also the ability to navigate and travel along the collective unconscious, rather being consumed by it, drowning in it, right? And this is all this Neptune and Pisces. It makes it very difficult to do these things when there are no boundaries anymore, and it's all just the woo, right? But that also means it's all just the woo, and our ability to tap into that in our everyday life with our feet on the ground is pretty strong right now. So the person who radiates perfect harmlessness can call the wildest creatures to him and can establish with them a partnership based on mutual respect and understanding. I mean, wouldn't you say that these, sunspots and these flares and the sun itself and the galaxy is like a wild energy that we are establishing a relationship with? I would say so. That's just my opinion, but that was the first thing that I thought about. Oops. So, and this comes from spaceweathernews.com, by the way. So this is all stuff that you can look at on your own. So, and keep track of it. So what we're going to do next now is look at this reading because, man, it's so, everything is just like flowing together so well, even though the energy we seem to be picking up on is really in a disconjunct. And I think the reason that is because it is kind of an inconjunct energy. It's that quincunx energy. And we see the Princess of Swords again, right, as our causal factor, and she is in a retrograde, but this does signal to me that we have managed to come out of that inconjunct energy, or we are about to come out of that inconjunct energy with the air and the earth element that the Princess of Swords represents, right? The Venus in the air signs. Coming out of that, transmuting that energy that often doesn't fit together, the inconjunct energy or the quincunx energy, coming out of it, that had a lot to do with the sun in Libra at this first quarter moon, right? The turbulent waters or the rapids, right? And our canoe on the rapids. And what's interesting is that there is no water in this energy, but there is a connection to there is still this sense of rippling. There are clouds, right? Clouds are moisture, right? They are just in a different state. And it's what's propping the princess up on the pedestal, which is the clouds coming into the gaseous state. Oh, that's very interesting, huh? I think that, we're coming out of and realizing that when our own mind is kind of passed over all of the turbulence of the rapids and can find a way to kind of rise above it, then we can use that calm perspective to reflect on that which caused that turbulence to begin with. So I do see this sense of coming out of this as our causal factor, coming off of this first quarter moon, because we have all week up to the full moon to really reorient ourselves. Now, when this card is reversed, it can mean, malicious and cruel and a failure to face up to the facts. And yes, there are many people that are going through this and that are not bringing any of this other energetic polarity, any of this guidance. It's not really being implemented or integrated at all. They're just experiencing experiencing things, even just experiencing these things at a fundamentally material level, people are going to make a commitment, right? Because we have the Lovers as our outcome. So there is a sense of making a commitment, and it's Mars in Gemini, right? Is really acting in that interest of making a commitment to something, right? Fulfilling that commitment to what? Transcendence. So there's our Princess of Swords reversed as our causal factor. Then we have, of course, the Devil. I mean, it doesn't get more Capricorn, Moon, 8th sphere energy than the Devil card, right? Number 15. Put a pin in that. That's going to be important as we go along here in terms of 15. 15 adds up to 6, right? Now, we've seen this card quite a bit, and in its reversal, this is a liberation, right? The overcoming of fear and its rewards. When the Devil is reversed, I feel like we really are experiencing, the liberation from the dark side of Saturn, or the 8th sphere, right? The Moon is a big part of this card, actually. So how can we break the cycle? That's really the question. And it's not so much breaking the cycle of materiality and coming into experience or physicality. It's more about breaking the cycle of feeling trapped, right? How do you break the cycle of getting, shunted back into, the 8th sphere or into the karmic wheel, for instance? So when it's reversed, liberation, freedom, release. And this is a big part of the Lyran Starseed activation, right? There has been so much strong cat energy, right? Jaguars, ocelots, bobcats, all of these, and even domestic cats too. But more of the wildcat energy seems to also be very prevalent and continues to be so. And as the Moon moved through Capricorn, it was hitting all those Lyran activation points. And what's interesting too is that Juno, asteroid Juno, in her retrograde in Pisces, has been in a sextile to all of these points, and so she's gonna station retrograde soon and come back over these points in Pisces. But she's at that 9 to 10 degrees, which is the degree of the first quarter moon, was 10 degrees of Capricorn. And so she represents, as our advocate, the ability to really to move beyond the clouds that obscure what's going down on the surface, right? When you get up into the clouds, as when you're in a plane, for instance, or any kind of astral travel, if you've had this experience, that this is, giving you this opportunity to really master the more spiritual mental realms. And I'm not saying that this is necessarily, how do you keep your feet on the ground and keep your spirit in, in relation to your higher self, because that's a big part of this equation here, as we're going to see. But at the heart of it, I think that there is this sense of release from the chains, right? The overcoming of the fear, because that's what it is. The fear is what keeps us trapped here. The fear that that if we release ourselves from this somehow, that we aren't anything, which is a total fallacy. And we do know that, and we are learning to actually embrace and know that, feel that, believe that, right? Have faith in that. I think that we are in this point right now of being released from this fear. So in terms of where our energetic root is, the light of the world is, our higher self is knocking. So we may not necessarily, it's not something that we're necessarily fully paying attention to. It's possible, right? You see that the 7 of Forces is back on top. So we do have this sense of reciprocity that we are consciously aware of, the idea of balance, what it means, what it feels like, how we act on it, right? Because the 7 of Forces, as we're going to see, the forces are the fire energy. But the light of the world at the bottom here in our energetic root, right? The light of the world, which is infinite, right? our divine self, our higher self, is trying to get our attention, and it's getting our attention through what? Our root system, our core being, our subconscious. Now the opportunity will be presenting itself for us to move into a higher awareness. And one way to do this that I think is really simple, I'm not saying it's easy, it's very simple, is you make every day sacred by giving yourself time to go within, by opening the door and allowing in the higher self, the sage, to come in, which is really just us, right? And of course, here's the cat, right? The cat that's over here going, hey, yo, bro, open the door, right? I mean, you're not paying attention. The window is open, the door is unlatched, the fire, right? We talked about this on Friday, the fire in the fireplace that warms up the wayward soul, that there's always something at the center here that will take us back to our original spiritual progression and reignite our commitment or give us something to burn in terms of a new commitment, right? But we have to actually open the door and pay attention to the fact that it's knocking, right? And this is something that I think is we're becoming more aware of it, but it's still kind of at the seat of our power right now. And really is where we're drawing our power, which I think is a really good thing. And releasing it through what? Balance, the 7 of forces, reciprocity, justice, fairness, equilibrium. We're paying attention to it. We're aware of it. We want balance. We are acting on finding this balance, right? The scales of balance and Libra are about applying our knowledge of ourself and our intuition that we've developed and releasing it to the social order, to the relationship, right? And there's an application of that knowledge in order to establish this balance. And Venus in Libra, her home sign, is the means in which we are able to feel what that balance is. Not what we see, not what we can be kind of pulled off to in our minds necessarily, but what it is that feels balance, right? When we're blindfolded and we have to rely on our sensitivity in our body, what does that feel like? Because the body will never lie, right? And so if you're having, if you're having a lot of physical expressions or manifestations right now, old things are coming back, new things are like, whoa. And that is part of getting older, of course. If you're somebody that is more in the mid to later parts of your life, I mean, it just takes more to it takes more energy to maintain a sense of physical equilibrium. But I also think that part of our process here is that it will be manifesting very quickly in our physical reality in order for us to see it for what it is and energetically clear it away. So we are very focused on this balance. And I think we kind of can't help it. The Sun and Venus are here, and soon Mercury is going to come back into Libra. So the focus is really on the reciprocity, and knowing where Libra is in your chart will give you an idea of like, oh, these areas of my life or these themes are where this is really expressing itself. Because the reciprocity, we're going to have our heads wrapped around that a little bit, at least, so we can really come into our effect of this causal relationship of commitment to something, right? And this is the Lover's card. It is the Gemini card, and it's number 6. Remember, I told you to put a pin in the 15 of the Devil card, right? Because there's another 6, and 6 is opportunity, it's harmony, it's activation. And the Lovers in particular, as the ruled by Gemini and as an air element, is the combination of contrasts, right? We say farewell to a former way of life. We have full acceptance of our devotion, our uncompromising love. This is Bhakti Yoga in a nutshell. And it's interesting because it's like you know it's from your heart when you are participating in something like Bhakti Yoga, but it's through those types of practices or those exteriorized practices that you are expressing yourself, right? So through the chanting, through singing, through dancing, right? Through expression, through prayer, right? Whatever it is, you're facing the opposition of yourself or those in relationship to you, and you are making a decision and you're coming into full acceptance of love. Love is the center of it and is the root of it. So there's trust, there's optimism, you're making a clear decision. And it's important to follow your heart in this way. I find this really, really favorable, especially because Mars is in Gemini. And so it is going to push and it's going to output that cardinal fire energy. It's going to spark something that will, activate your heart to want to fulfill this or to commit to this or reaffirm your commitment, right? It's like if you're married and people renew their vows, right? Something like that. Or for the first time, you are going to make a commitment in a way you've never done before. There's the cosmic egg, you have the lion and this large bird energy. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but they're in contrast. The two cherubims are in contrast. Everything is in contrast. And then you have the faceless kind of wisdom that's sanctifying all of it. And then you have the cherub, right, with the arrow. And this is something that I know when Mercury and Venus come into a conjunction later this season in Sagittarius, this energy is going to come up big time, right? Big time. So it's something to look forward to, of like really being activated and initiated when that happens in a really accessible way. Mercury and Venus, right? These are personal planets, right? Our thoughts and our mental sphere and our knowledge and our learning and the feels, right? And satisfaction and harmony and balance. So there's so much more coming around this. It's so great. So we have to, but we still have to be also here right now. And so this is where the guidance comes in. Number 1, Uriel and the Sphinx. Boy, we haven't seen them in a while. Number 21, this number, boy, so important, right? The number 3, and also is, really the end of the major arcana in the trump is the 21. And the Uriel and the Sphinx, right? So we know that the Sphinx esoterically is the keeper of the hidden knowledge, the deep knowledge that goes beyond just our, and the silent holder of truth, right? Uriel is the fire of God. Archangel Uriel rules the star Antares, right? This says, it's one thing to open the door, and we will. But part of this is that it's time to do a lot of really important work and some of the most difficult work that we're going to do, right? Not only in this lifetime, but multiple lifetimes. I mean, we came here to be part of this process where we don't have to keep, I don't know how it's going to unfold, but we don't have to keep going through the destructive process over and over and starting over again. But diligence is needed because we're digging into the very nature of who we are for inner discovery and finding our deepest self. The fire of God, or Uriel, or the connection to Antares, right? The heart of the scorpion. This is about the energy of, not the energy of Mars and Aries, but the energy kind of Mars and Scorpio, where you have the courage and the bravery and the diligence and the work to do the digging and chipping away at all of the old beliefs and histories to get at what the hell's going on with you, right? Or us or whatever. It takes real work, but the work is what leads you to your initiation, right? That higher self that comes knocking on the door. It's, prayer is important, but prayer is really just you expressing what is already a template within your heart and is ready to go. And so that is like the process of bringing it to manifestation is the practice of it. So, but it's the work that we do, that unglamorous Virgo type of work that leads to that initiation. And we are going to have to be brave. Well, this is going to be very difficult, whatever, we're going through it together and in our own way. And this Jaguar energy keeps coming up really strongly. And this is a big part of it too. So, and the Jaguar energy related to the shadow feminine and the shamanic initiation seems pretty strong. Now, what's interesting is that we also have the condor, which is seemingly the direct opposite of this. While on the one hand, we are digging in and chipping away at the belief systems that are creating an energetic template that then become expressed in our physical lives, the condor is talking about being, if you're too enmeshed in it, you're not gonna be able to see the big picture, right? You got to take that bird's eye view. You got to have both wings, right, in order to fly, which again is that polarity. And there's that asteroid Juno, that's taking us up above the clouds and being able to master this realm. But this requires that we actually take this step back. So even in this inner work, we are being challenged to find the polarity and use it as a means to come into contact with who we really are. So this is a great opportunity to practice that detachment. So this is something that really stuck out to me about this card, is that oftentimes we will feel guilty about not doing enough and not fully immersing ourselves in the problem. And detachment is a type of objective compassion, and it allows us to let go of our attachment to an outcome and really be in alignment. So if you find yourself really struggling or really kind of balking in some ways, or not answering the door because of how difficult this process is, or how scary it is, or how it's very easy to bypass this work. And this is where Chiron really comes into the picture now. This is a great animal guide that you can call upon in some way. How are you able to soar above it and not be enmeshed in the situation, and also have a fresh perspective, but not feel guilty because you're not just like, I have to fix this problem. It's just one step at a time. You have to chip away, right? That takes actual energy, and you can ask for assistance as well, which is the heart, the combustion, right? The passion in the heart. What is it that makes the scorpion actually want to strike in the first place? That's the heart of the scorpion. And it's that drive, that strong drive and the hunger to get at the bottom of it, right? And that will definitely motivate us with that energy to get at it. So again, what we also find here in terms of our conscious awareness is almost the same kind of thing. At first, they seem like they're diametrically opposed, but then you realize, we could see ourselves that way, and all of society, or we can see that diametric opposition as not the means for the Great Reset, but as the energy for the Great Awakening, and it always has been. So the chameleon is having us stay in the background, adapt to the situation, and it's not about being complacent, it's about surrendering to the will of the divine source instead of your own ego in this situation, and allow events to unfold without direct intervention. Because the more you try to push something based on your fear or your ego, the more you may be pushing it away. So pay attention, right? The chameleon is not just like, not paying attention. Chameleon's definitely paying attention, but blending into the background, not being an obvious energy to change things. So become more of a witness and observer. Wait until the right time to take action. There will be a time to take action. Even if you feel like, if I don't take action now, that means I'm not doing everything I can to amend this situation or to be present with it. That's not true. Being the witness and observer is just as much of a choice as is to take action. And I know this is very difficult because of where Mars is in Gemini. It wants us to take action. It's pushing us to take an action on one side or the other. But realizing that it's not just about one side or the other is how we can make the most use of this energy, I think. So then you have the architect, right? So on the one hand, you're taking a step back, but on the other hand, you're actually taking initiative. And the one of keys is very physical, right? The architect of your own experience, your own consciousness, your own focus. What are you paying attention to? This is about stepping into a position of power to actually believe that you can act on an opportunity when it comes your way, right? if you don't believe that you can be the architect of your own experience and reality, then when the time comes, you're not going to be able, you won't be ready, right? You'll doubt yourself. You'll have imposter syndrome. I have that a lot, and I know a lot of people do. There are people in my life that that still struggle with it, that you would never be like, why the hell would you ever feel this way about yourself? And, it's just part of trusting that you have what it takes. And there's something, if you need to put your energy somewhere, I feel like that in the establishment of you as the architect of your own experience is a good place to start, while you're also, blending back and just kind of surveying the landscape and being like, okay, this is where things actually stand right now. This is where the balance actually is. Is it reciprocal? And Mercury, it's all about Mercury moving direct now. It's like, okay, let's start putting these pieces together, but it's still in Virgo, which is about the intuition, and you cannot tap into your intuition while your mind is just constantly running. And it doesn't matter which direction it's going in. If it's just like, here, let's go down this hole, let's go out this way, let's do this. Oh my God. Right. And believe me, I struggle with this all the time. This is why meditation is kind of essential for my well-being, because otherwise, it totally, my mind just, it's very Andromedan, and there is a lot there that has been incredibly beneficial, but without discipline, it's been, it can really take you to some places that are just, not going to be balanced at all. And then you can never make a commitment to anything, right? You're just spinning out into idea land without ever actually putting it into form. Mercury is the form is here and we are acting, in accordance with it. So I think it's important to renew our commitment, right? And know that we are the architect of our own experience, and when the time is right and we're ready, we might need some more training here. We might need to listen to our feminine counterpart who has no smile on her face, right? The dude is pointing off and he's got a big old grin on his face and he's like, look at all of this. She, on the other hand, it is just deadpan, right? And I'm not saying she's upset, and it's kind of hard to see. It's a little blurry in this picture, but it's not that she's upset. It's the divine feminine is taking stock. She's not emotionally getting involved in what is or isn't or what's happening. She is actually surveying the landscape in its entirety. And there is, I think, a part, our feminine, right, which is really at the root, which is really in the subconscious and expressed that way, is realizing that there is some really foundational work that may need to happen. And there's nothing wrong with being in both of these places at once either. We have to have the confidence in our masculine, but we also have to have the sensitivity of the divine feminine to know when we have to dig down and when we are going to start building up, right? And I get a real strong sense here that we are leading up to this full moon, that we are going to be working with those areas of overcoming fear, of the mutual respect and understanding, when we are willing to trust and be in cooperation with the natural world and everything that is transpiring, and the sun, right? I really feel like, especially in the zodiac, Capricorn is the 10th house, and that represents the sun at its zenith. The four of discs in the tarot, the Four of Pentacles, is the sun in Capricorn. Power, right? There is incredible power that we all have together when we are identified with the crystallized form, with our destiny, with our mission, in the systems that we have contributed to creating together. And Pluto stationing direct is just okay, it's going to be the metamorphosis of this that we go through together. And yeah, we are building something new, but we have to make sure that we are really in balance as we are doing that and not getting caught up in trying to fix it from the ego level, because Chiron in Aries is pretty, it's been a pretty strong indicator of where everyone's inner child and ego has been fractured and needs healing really desperately because of the society that we've all grown up in and been part of, most of us inadvertently creating. So part of the Great Awakening is becoming aware of all of these dynamics and making a conscious choice to put our focus and attention in a direction that is actually in line with the Great Spirit, right? With our connection to Source. So I love this reading personally. I know it's been a weird weekend, and I know it seems disjointed and things are confusing, but I think that's just part of the first quarter. That's the cycle we're in right now. The first quarter period is about readjusting and reorienting ourselves, and what are we doing, right? And so if you're feeling all of that stuff, that's a pretty good indication something is not necessarily fully balanced right now, and maybe there is, not maybe, there is more that we gotta go into much deeper, and I think it's okay. It's okay, but if we really want to build a society or our lives, or even just release all of the karmic residue of everything that's been, so that we can kind of start from a clean slate, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. That's the whole point of all this, hidden truth and hidden knowledge in the mystery schools, is that we don't have to do that. We actually can still, build upon our previous experiences, because we remember, because our soul doesn't die with the process of materiality going through its natural cycle. Anyway, I'm just belaboring the point now, because we all get it, I would hope. And if we don't, that's okay, right? This is what all of this Starseed ministry is for, is to get us, on the same page about these things, regardless of where we're at in our lives. I try to make it as accessible, regardless of what type of experience you have, in terms of your own journey, so that we realize that we're all kind of going through these things in our own way, but also together, right? And that's how we're going to make it through, is together, truly, and to not lose our humanity. Jeez, I mean, some people lost it long ago, and that's their karma, right? There's no reason to even be afraid of those people anymore, because we know where our boundaries are. We know what it means to be in alignment with our higher self, and we know what not to do in order to, find ourselves getting sucked into that eighth sphere like forever. So we just have to be true to ourselves, right? All right, guys. I'm going to bring up the chart, and, just take, we talked a lot more about the astrology, obviously, there we go, on Friday. So this is really just to kind of give ourselves a check-in, right, about what to expect as the week unfolds, because like I said, we're going to be looking at Pluto stationing retro or direct, right? We're going to have a full moon in Aries, and the sun or the moon will be conjunct Tau Ceti. It'll be conjunct Chiron. The sun is going to be opposite Chiron this week, and the moon is going to move through Capricorn. It's going to move through Aquarius. It's going to move through Pisces. Just to keep in mind, this is going to be the progression for the most part. For the most part of everything stationing direct between now and the solstice. Pluto stations direct, then Saturn stations direct, then I think it's Jupiter stations direct right at Thanksgiving here in the US, right? The last Thursday in November. And then I think it's Neptune stations direct, and then Chiron stations direct. So the moon, especially over the next couple days leading up to the full moon in Aries, is going to be, opportunities to emotionally and intuitively kind of plug into these energies as they're coming into basically a standstill and getting ready to start, coming into their forward momentum, right? Pluto is going to be turning back on. Saturn is going to be, that inner crystallization is going to start unfolding outwardly, right? Imagine like the fractal that starts in ourselves is now going to start coming out from us and having an impact on the world around us, and vice versa, right? The collective consciousness of Aquarius is also going to be impacting it with that internalized, crystallized template within ourselves too. So that may be a little bit of a difficult kind of like, whoa, as those things maybe find like, butting heads in some ways. But I think that for the most part, the Saturn retrograde has been establishing such a firm, crystallized energetic template within ourselves that anything that comes about in terms of pressure is just going to be like a piezoelectric effect. That's the ideal situation. So I'm going to check in with the stream here. Everything looks good. Ever since I got a hard line into the modem and changed the settings on my software, it has just been so much better and so much smoother. Gosh, I can't even believe how crappy. It was just so glitchy and crappy, and I really appreciate the people that have stuck by in that experience, right? I'm learning all of this organically as I go, right? I'm not sponsored by anybody other than you guys, right? Other than those who are subscribers to the channel, those who are subscribers to the Starseed Fellowship and the Catalyst Classroom. It is a direct relationship based on your support. So there's no marketing, and there's certainly nobody else like helping me other than my own self learning how to do this stuff. So, and these are skills that you take, whenever you do something like this, you have those skills forever now, right? As opposed to outsourcing it, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. Sometimes I'm like, man, I really wish I had like a video editor person. And many people do. They have, the really big YouTube channels, but I feel like that. Anyway, that was a total aside. So I'm sure there was something there that was relevant to what we're talking about, because that's just how my channel works, right? My intuitive process will lead me into places that don't seem like irrelevant, but it's because I'm not overthinking it and it's just coming through. So again, right? We're not reinventing the wheel, right? We're not. We are just remembering what we have already accomplished at a soul level or experienced at a soul level and bringing it to this experience, just like the spiral. So, and you don't forget those things, right? And sometimes you let them go because you're in a different part of the cycle and you're picking up things all along the way. And then you return back and you're just like, oh, wow. Now I can add all of these things together into a whole new experience. So anyway, here is our astrology for today. This is the 3rd of October. Like I said, the moon is moving through Capricorn. It's going to be void, of course, after it meets Pluto in a conjunction, right? Which is opposite Procyon. Now, the degree that Pluto is at and where it will station direct is a pilgrimage of people, moving up the mountain to the shrine. And it's the idea that the masters and teachers before us, which is really ourselves, and certainly those that we identify as ancestors and guides, and our galactic family, those who have at a different density and dimensional level made these spiritual transitions. We are truly unique in that we are doing this in third dimension and third density, right? We're going to be, boy, what a resume point for for us when we get to the point where the flip is coming, and it is coming. And one of the things that I really liked about the Dark Journalist episode and broadcast about the pole shift is that the people that were in his chat, somebody had brought up about how does this actually correspond to more of a flipping in the consciousness of humanity? And I would say yes, absolutely, and how they work together. But I've had plenty of vision. I've had a number of visions in the last couple years, but very, very recently that suggests to me and other people, you're free to please let let us know if you've had these experiences yourself, especially if you are a contactee or an experiencer and you know that you're getting astral contact on a regular basis, because I feel like many of us are. We're being physically prepared for that. We're being energetically prepared right now in the astral in order to physically experience it. So it's already happening at a higher dimensional level. And you may find that you're having maybe dreams or visions or in a shamanic journeying type of space, right, that you can get into with certain techniques. You may find that there's imagery or something that relates to an actual experience of, I feel it in my physical body. Like I'm going into scenarios where I'm literally flipping over. And I've dreamt many times now of being here for the magnetic shift. And I feel like that what's happening now is that we are being energetically prepared in the astral, in dream time, in order for us to physically experience it. So, and the reason I bring that up is because this is a big part of like Pluto turning back on as well, and part of the experience of the old systems, falling away when there is no counterbalance to that because it's been destroyed or been, basically all, cut down to the soil, so to speak. Then there is an imbalance that will shift the scales in order to reestablish that equilibrium and balance. And so it could be it's going to be very substantial. And so I feel like the energy of the reading today is reminding us to be so present with where we are right now, because everything we're experiencing in our own journeys is also part of the training ground to prepare for this bigger flip that will, like I said, you can have the earth shepherding us through this process because she's done it countless times. And guess what? We've done it too, because we have soul memory of it. There's all of us all the starseeds have, Atlantean connection now. So we've already have the soul memory of these experiences. So when the moon meets Pluto, and then it's going to, tonight, in this conjunction, it's this connection to the process again of the power that is extracted and the transformation that comes about through the demolition process of Pluto. We're going to have an opportunity to really emotionally connect with that, subconsciously connect with that. If you find yourself asleep during that time, it's going to be late tonight on the East Coast, and then the moon goes void, of course, which means that there's no major aspects with the moon before it moves into the next sign, which is Aquarius. So we also know that Saturn and Uranus are still in the square. They're going to stay in the square until Saturn stations direct later in October, and then starts moving away from Uranus. But it is pretty strong. And Saturn and Uranus, of course, this is where the brick wall gets, this is the tower. This is like a very strong tower type of moment with this square, right? Because the crystallized aspect of even the collective consciousness with Saturn in Aquarius is coming into cross purposes with the ruler of Aquarius that is down in Taurus, that is shifting the landscape under the surface in a lot of ways. And so, it really does test how strong that scaffolding is within ourselves. And you can feel everything building, right? You got the Durham trial is this month. We got the full moon. We got Pluto stationing direct, very soon. And there are other things that I know are happening out on the world stage this month that are scheduled, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but you guys know what they are, and it's all based on what you're focusing on anyway. So, but this is still very strong and prevalent. The Mercury-Neptune opposition is still very strong and prevalent. Now that Mercury is moving direct, it'll be moving eventually out of range of this opposition, but it's still really, really strong right now. And something else to pay attention to, give us a sense of our own boundary and our own ability to utilize our own polarity as we're being stretched and pulled into this space of non-duality, right? Non-differentiation, where everything is everything else, with Neptune and Pisces. Because in order to really be able to hold the intensity of that experience, we have to have some sort of surrender to ourselves, right? And where we are able to create a vessel that can hold the totality of that non-duality and non-differentiation. So Mercury is just like, all right, let's go. Let's start putting this puzzle together again. We had to go back and fix some things. And the Sun is going to be opposite Chiron. Chiron, which is now... well, it has been, right, in conjunction with the Andromeda constellation. The nodes of the moon are now also in alignment with the Andromeda constellation. In fact, they're going to come to, the nodes of the moon are going to eventually meet Chiron. And I'll find out exactly what degree that is and give some insight into the actual fixed star position and starseed activation. But also knowing that the north node of the moon meeting Chiron sooner than later, over the next very small amount of time, I'd say the next year or so, is going to have this connection here. That's going to be very interesting. But they're both in Andromeda now on other ends, and they're going to come together in the Andromeda constellation and meet in a conjunction, showing our soul's trajectory, where we're being pulled in order to learn and evolve, also being completely connected to the Chiron wound, right? The bridge, the rainbow bridge between our material self and our spiritual consciousness, not coming through something purely intellectual, but through the experience of suffering and the experience of being human. That's a big part of it. So when the Sun is in opposition to Chiron in Libra, and that's going to be one of three, the Sun and Venus and eventually Mercury, all in retrograde to Chiron in Libra. When we identify, just like in the reading, with a sense of balance, reciprocity, equality, fairness, justice, this, symmetry, aesthetic balance, right? Harmony, by way of giving ourselves, applying the perfection of who we are to the relationship. It's going to make these Chiron wounds even that much more obvious, right? Because we can't, if we stay just over in the Libra energy as much as we want to, especially with Venus, we don't necessarily give ourselves the opportunity to also tap into the spark of our own subjective experience of who we are. So the Sun, 14 to 15 degrees Libra, is the circular path, the labyrinth, right? If you've ever walked a labyrinth, you know that there is a sense of transpersonal peace that is developed as a result of just following the pathway, right? Or a sense of boredom, surely. That can be the case as well. But, we're identified with the process of walking this pathway, of coming to terms with the cyclical nature of relationship, or the social order, or just having a dialectic, right? Our spiritual material self. And as we identify with that, as we are illuminated by that, as we find our voice through that process of circular pathway and motion, right? Walking the labyrinth. It draws out the ways that we have denied our inner child to, wrap ourselves in the desire and the potency of who we want to be, who we are, who we came here to be, that spark of life, and how I think it'll draw out where the imbalances are in a way that will allow us to reestablish our ability to weave that, fulfillment of our desire to be ourselves, right? It's like weaving a blanket or something. In fact, that is actually the Sabian symbol of 15 degrees Aries, which is an Indian weaving, a ceremonial blanket. And it's the idea here that in the process of the weaving of the blanket, we then surround ourselves with that. But it is the blanket that is our are clothed in light, right? It's like Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat. With Chiron here, of course, in its retrograde, we are feeling into the ways that we have denied this for ourselves, or the ways that we have also denied that it has an impact on the world around us. We can't just stay like kind of wrapped in our blanket forever and not deal with the way that our relationships or society or whoever or whatever we're in relationship with is out of balance, or how it affects the balance, right? And we may, it's going to come out. And every time something comes into opposition to Chiron over the next couple of weeks, it's going to bring these old stories and wounds up to the surface for us to really acknowledge, and to acknowledge our inner child, right? It's hard work. And again, this goes along with Uriel and the Sphinx too, of digging. We got to dig deeper, right? And we got to chip away at the rock hard like substance of our old belief systems. And part of that is going to be acknowledged and really identified through the Libra energy, because Libra has a Saturnian quality of, without materiality, there is nothing to really balance. And even your own thoughts are things to be balanced. Whatever has an energetic signature that can be weighed against the weight of our own heart, right? Or the weight of a feather, that's going to be a big part of this. So let's see what else is happening this week. The moon's going to just be moving through Capricorn. It's going to move through Aquarius. It's going to meet Saturn. It's going to move into Pisces. It's going to meet Neptune. And then we have those oppositions. And then, like I talked about, when we get to the end of the week. So the middle of the week is going to be kind of these chances to just tap in with what the moon is doing, moving through Capricorn, moving through Aquarius, moving through Pisces, right? These are about social expression as a whole and our connection internally and subconsciously to it. It's when we get to the end of the week, so we see that Mercury has the trine with Pluto, right? The refinement, the ceremonial discipline that we've established through a practice, right? Through a training. This is really present actually in a lot of more Eastern traditions, just like the yoga or any kind of movement art, Qigong, Tai Chi, even in Reiki, or any kind of martial arts. They establish the framework in which to practice this process so that you can kind of let your mind go a little bit or entirely in many ways, so that you can actually allow the intuitive, the energetic, and the spiritual nature to come forward, and you're not overthinking or having to think about the technical aspect. And it does require some discipline, right? And so this Mercury trine Pluto at the end of the week is going to stabilize us in that, as right as Pluto is about to station direct when it comes to, the climbing of the mountain. Perhaps we've been training for this ascent now for many, many lifetimes, and it's not just us, it's generations that have come before us, right? It is multidimensional experiences. And considering how close this is to being in a square to Orion, I would say that's a big part of it, is all of the regressive Orion activity that is now ready to be put to use in terms of their own soul's evolution, if you want to think about it that way. So this is about following that refined process with some discipline that is really going to stabilize us as we go through this process with Pluto stationing direct. And then, of course, here is the sun opposite Chiron on the 7th as well. And then we come to the 8th, which is Saturday. And this is where the moon starts to come into Aries. It passes through Pisces, comes into Aries. It's going to meet Jupiter in its retrograde. And on the 9th, we have our full moon in Aries, which is going to be conjunct Tau Ceti, just past its conjunction with Chiron, right? And so we may find, our actions and even the blanket that we weave and wrap ourselves in eventually has an impact on those that we come in contact with, our relationships, the social, the social order, our relationship with society, our relationship to our spiritual nature. It all has an impact. And I think what this full moon, if we can identify ourselves as someone who has gone through all of the ups and downs of, the turbulence, again, of the scales finding a balance, it will illuminate this feeling of timing, right? Where how necessary sometimes it is to be like the chameleon, right? To pull in or to not be ambiguous, to withdraw and be able to create the energy from within, right? If we don't spark a new creation, then we are caught in a feedback loop. But that's part of the shame and guilt and that inner child being suppressed in some way from actually doing that. And also, too, the idea that if we jump the gun based on our emotions, instead of actually seeing the big picture like the condor represents, then we risk ruining or really risk the bigger mission. And Tau Ceti, the star that is at the bottom of Cetus, or the Kraken, or the sea monster, if you follow Alex Collier's work, what he talks about, the beings from Tau Ceti, right, they wanted to come in here and bust this place up because one of their own got, captured and kept by our own, humans, right? The human, United States government. And imagine if they just come in blazing in the 60s. And that would have just, everything about what this cycle has been culminating toward in order for us to successfully move through this next big galactic cycle, it would have been ruined, right? And this is not to put any pressure on anybody. This is about bringing that story into our own lives and seeing where we may need to take a step back, or we need to pull in and be able to generate that potency within ourselves, rather than risk attempting to force something before it's ready and maybe really damaging or pushing away the chances of what you actually really want, which is to establish balance and justice in the galaxy, right? So if you think about the Tau Ceti, if they came in here, like I said, guns a-blazing, they would have fucked the whole thing up. And they really had to, pull themselves back and really put their emotions and their own self-preservation in check, so that they didn't do that for the sake of everybody. It's not just about them, right? And so these themes are going to come up in all kinds of different ways, and I would really encourage over this week to really tap into your fear, that fear energy, not tap into it in terms of like feeding it, but knowing that when you can trust and establish mutual respect with nature, with the planet, with the cosmos, with source, with yourself, that's going to go a long way into overcoming that fear and being ready to face up to and establish something brand new, right? As we face the fear that we all have about the reality of the collapsing system all around us, right? So, and it's okay to feel that way, you know what I mean? It's intense. It's really intense, which is why it's really important to find that peace, right? Find the way that we can establish peace, whatever it is for yourself, right? Going out into natural settings is one of the primary ways, right? Walking the labyrinth, finding the hammock that we can, that we can find ourselves in, right? Even though there is motion and rhythm, our consciousness is able to find that balance. So it's going to be an interesting week. Oh, sorry, guys. And I'm not going to say that it's not going to be difficult, because I think it is. And the full moon is going to be really, really important. So I'm going to leave it there for today. I feel like that I have gone on long enough for this broadcast. Thank you so much for being here, guys. So just a couple things that I would love to share with you before I sign off, just to give you an idea. We talked about the yoga challenge. That's going to be released very soon, and an opportunity to sign up for that is going to be available. So like I said, get on the mailing list through the description box link, and you will be able to be one of the first people to know about it. So the other thing is that I want to keep the equinox forecast open just for a few more days. If you're interested, if you are a monthly subscriber, this is at a discount. It's only $77 if you're a monthly subscriber, so if that's something you're interested in. And otherwise, it's a 90-minute recording. We look at your personal astrology from the equinox to the solstice and give some really practical suggestions, practical problem-solving techniques, right? Just looking at the areas that may be impacted, so you can have be conscious of your choices and your commitment to your process by understanding the cosmic cycles, the language of the cosmic cycles. I feel like that this is exactly why astrology is so useful in this particular process. So that's something that you can either go to the website, catalystenergies.net, or you can email me directly and request this forecast. So, and let's see, what was the other thing? Oh yeah, Aries, sun, moon, and rising people, your full moon is upon us. So if you want to get an idea of what to expect, even just like a quick check-in for the rest of the lunar cycle, a little 30-minute snapshot or whatever, this is something that you can request as well, either through the website, or you can email me directly and request the lunar transit forecast. So the sale rate is available for Aries and Libra, sun, moon, and rising people. So that's another option for you guys. So just keep an eye out for things. And of course, if you really want to support this work, you can do so by subscribing to this channel. You can do so by liking this content, sharing it, commenting on it. All of that goes a long way to supporting the growth of this channel, so that other people can find their way to the Starseed Fellowship and be part of this growing community. So, my friends, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. I'll see you on Friday for the Catalyst Full Moon Astrology Report. Aries, keep an eye out for your full moon forecast. It'll be posted this week. And I love you guys. Thank you. Take care of yourself. Take care of other people around you the best you can. I'll see you on Friday, okay? Bye.